Live look at Paris there as voters elected a new president today. But now to the defeated candidate in the French presidential election, Marine Le Pen. The 48-year-old mother of three is the leader of the right-wing National Front Party. Her father was the founder, but in 2015 she expelled him from the party for denying horrors of the Holocaust. She's a lawyer who previously worked for the state defending illegal immigrants facing deportation. But during her campaign, she vowed to limit immigration and ban all Muslims from entering France. Also, Le Pen came in third place in the 2012 French presidential elections. In this campaign, Le Pen found supporters with voters who didn't want a traditional far-right candidate. Her stances on the economy and terror played well with the rural and working-class French voters. A plan, our next guest says, was similar, strikingly similar, if you will, to the strategy that President Donald Trump used in the U.S. presidential election, but it wasn't enough to clinch her a victory. Joining me now, Scott Greer, deputy editor with the Daily Caller. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
First and foremost, I just want to get straight to the point. There's no denying that a third of the voters voted for Marine Le Pen. What does that mean going forward?
Well, it means she has this huge base of support that she can use in even future elections. This has doubled what her father got in the runoff election in 2002, and that was an election where the president at the time refused to debate him, and nobody wanted to vote for him. The fact that she can double that and shows that the massive amount of support for these policies that, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, most respectable society wouldn't even acknowledge, even though a lot of this is due to her own policies of undemonizing the party. That's the term they use for kicking out a lot of these radicals and extremists that were in the National Front, such as her father and such as other people who were making a lot of statements bordering on anti-Semitism and a lot of things that even society said, we're not going to have this. So she has built a platform and a policy that can appeal to a large number of French voters. But in this election, it seemed like it wasn't enough. And one difference between her and Donald Trump is that Trump was able to win over the center right, the Republican establishment here. The party, which at first, during the primaries, didn't like him very much, came around to him and embraced him. And a lot of his policies, in terms of the economics, were still in line with traditional Republican orthodoxy on economic matters. He wasn't talking about nationalizing the banks like Le Pen is in France. So there are differences that he was able to win over the center-right establishment, which Le Pen herself wasn't. The center-right candidate actually endorsed Macron.
To continue on that point, I want you to elaborate, because she's not necessarily the American definition of a conservative. She really wanted and promoted government involvement, things that if you went to, for example, the CPAC convention here, you would never hear conservatives promote. But she promoted that.
Yeah, she did. And a lot of these policies are ripped out straight from the Socialist Party and even the Communist Party playbooks from France. But those very policies were able to get her votes from previous socialist and communist voters. These were voters who thought that the establishment had failed them, that they weren't dealing enough with the issue of immigration. The Socialist Party was very pro-immigration, very pro-open borders, which a lot of these workers who see that they're, competing with these new migrants, who see their communities rapidly changing, they see this as a problem that they want fixed. And Le Pen was able to win them over, not with just her appeal about limiting immigration, but also appealing to their economic interests, to their core economic beliefs, which the Socialist Party has essentially abandoned in France, has become more. Macron was previously associated with the Socialist Party, with the reigning socialist cabinet, but he's very pro-globalism, he's very pro the free market, he's very pro-trade deals, which a lot of these working-class voters in France are very opposed to.
I want to pull out, if I may, with you and take more of a macro view. Condoleezza Rice was quoted in USA Today, and she basically said these populist movements that we're seeing, and not just in France, but in other parts of the globe, are really changing the landscape of politics. And we saw that in this particular race, where it wasn't the traditional values they were running on, it was nationalism versus globalism. And how are you seeing that trending across the world, really?
We're seeing that throughout the West, and Marine Le Pen herself has said this, that it's not a matter of left and right anymore, it's between nationalism and globalism. And we see this throughout races, throughout Europe, and even in the United States. And in the United States, between Trump and Hillary, a lot of the debate was, she's a globalist, I'm a nationalist, I'm going to protect our national interests, she's going to sell us off to these, for these trade deals and to NATO and the UN, and that was Donald Trump's core message. And we saw this even in Austria, the presidential election, where a nationalist ran against somebody who was representing open borders, who was representing the previous establishment that supported all these policies that a lot of the working class didn't support. So, and even with Brexit, the argument for keeping the UK and the European Union was that it's a part of us keeping the UK in the global economy. We need this for our business interests, while the people who wanted Brexit were saying, no, we want to restore our national sovereignty. We want to determine our economy. We want to determine who's let into our country, not these EU bureaucrats. So we see this keep playing out in the West, and it's not going to go away. I think a lot of these issues that Le Pen played on and earned so many voters in that, 10 years ago she wouldn't have gotten, that now she's getting, is because these issues are sticking around, such as, the economy and immigration.
It's fascinating. Thanks for your input, Scott. We really appreciate it. Scott Greer from the Daily Caller.
Thank you.
Thank you.